Welcome back. It's 7:42 now. Joining us now to go through some of the day's headlines is our lefty on the left, GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and the righty on the right, former Conservative advisor Claire Purcell.
But first, let's bring you up to date with some of the newspapers are covering this morning.
And the Telegraph leads with Suella's scheme to get Rwanda flights off the ground in a scathing monologue.
The Times reports on benefits claimants losing their rights to free NHS prescriptions.
And the Eye also leads with the crackdown on benefits.
The Financial Times is covering Xi Jinping's visit to the United States.
And the Sun reports on a police force warning staff that using the word policeman could be breaking the law.
Let's have a look at GB News presenter Patrick Christie's at a pro-Palestinian march last night. The ever-diplomatic Christie's went down to the protest for a little chat. Let's see how that went down.
I just asked why you're here.
No, don't talk to journalists.
Why shouldn't people talk? Why are you here?
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
Hello.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
A minute. We have to explain to them why we are here in a civilised manner. Roshanara Ali, everyone else in the establishment is condoning the genocidal murder of Palestinians.
Well, don't they seem like lovely people? Claire, fair play to Pat. He's not afraid to go and get stuck in. That was a protest outside, I believe, the Labour Party MP's office in Bethnal Green, because they were protesting about the fact that she didn't vote the way that they wanted them to on the ceasefire action. But these protests, they've been going on now for weeks and weeks and weeks. And we saw this week, particularly with the War Memorial, when they were clambering over that. Are the public running out of patience with these sort of protests, do you think?
I think so. When you start to look at the people that they're targeting, I mean, that was Roshanara Ali's office. So this is a Muslim woman, and a frightening mob outside screaming at her is not going to win hearts and minds. I think the behaviour needs to tone down. I was in Westminster when the march was outside. It was a planned lobby of MPs, which turned into a much bigger thing. It was quite frightening. I was on the tube with a lot of people who were obviously going home quite early. They were very well behaved, but it did descend into chaos. And I think the public are going to look at it and say, and you're right with your earlier comment, if those were white football-loving people, they would have been arrested.
Obviously, there's a sort of danger in banning the marches, that we're seen as a country that isn't interested in free speech anymore. But I think there are plenty of people who would argue that people in London are now pretty much not free to go about their day-to-day lives because these marches are really interfering. I mean, it took me 20 minutes to get out of Westminster Station the other day because the entrance was completely blocked by protesters. If people can't get to work, if they can't get to see their friends, can't get to see their families, go to hospital, etc., they don't have the freedom to do that because of these marches. Is that going to be a problem, and is it time to ban them?
Well, no, is the short answer. But, I mean, yes, marches are disruptive, just in the same way strikes are disruptive. But people have a right to protest, and it's really important to hold on to that, provided they do it within the law. It's non-violent. So the government wanted to ban the Armistice Day protests on Saturday. 300,000 people marched. And for the most part, not entirely, but for the most part, it was orderly. The marchers kept their promise and stayed away from the cenotaph.
Apart from the people saying kill all the Jews, and apart from the people saying Hitler knew how to deal with these people, apart from the kids in Hamas terrorist fancy dress.
I am saying largely it was OK. The whole point was that there was no reason to ban that march, and the government had demanded that Mark Rowley did it. He held firm and said the threshold wasn't met. He was right. The then Home Secretary was wrong.
Is there a moment, though, is there a point at which the freedom to protest intervenes, gets in the way of people's freedom to live an ordinary life? Well, we might not be there yet, but might we be getting there?
I don't think so, on the basis that, yes, it will be disruptive. It's bound to be disruptive if you have a lot of people marching. If you're trying to get out of a tube station, there's loads of people outside. I do take that point. But once again, we really ought to cling to the most important issue, which is the right to protest. That is a human right.
Yeah, but it's the right kind of protest seems to have the right. I was at the Cenotaph at the weekend on Armistice Day. I was there when it kicked off. And let me tell you this, the police were very, very swift to steam into what they would call the far right. But yet later on, when the Palestine mob started coming over, they completely stood off. There were videos going around of them scrapping in Trafalgar Square. The police didn't do anything. And we saw this week of the protesters clambering on the War Memorial. The police didn't do anything. So it's starting to feel like the police are taking sides, is it?
And this is the one thing I really agreed with Suella Braverman when she was still Home Secretary, is this two-tier policing that we seem to have at the moment. It shouldn't be allowed. It is very clear that some behaviours, and it doesn't matter who contributes to it, some behaviours are illegal, they are criminal, they are not right and should be clamped down on. Intimidation in protests, you're always going to get a feeling of a mob. And even if you do, it doesn't mean that it's illegal. I'm not in favour of banning them, but I do think the police need to be a lot more transparent on why they're arresting people and why they are not arresting people.
OK, a quick change of gear. We had a debate a moment ago about the male pill, which I saw got you a bit hard on the collar, Claire. But this is kind of related. The NHS suggests talking therapy for menopause flushers.
Yeah. And, you know when you just want to hold your head in your hands? Because
yes,
menopause is very serious. It is also a physical condition. CBT, talking therapies, may help some people for some parts of it, but it should not be the go-to aspect of every single thing.
How does it work? We sit around and chat about it and it goes away?
And that seems to be largely the sort of view on this. Rather than actually dealing with it, making HRT available to women, treating it seriously, treating women as proper people and not just somebody that can go and have a chat about it and perhaps a little bit of a cry into a tissue. It is ridiculous, and this needs to be taken seriously. And if this was man, then you would have everything chucked at you. You would have every drug available, you would have every opportunity given to you, but it's women and we're supposed to suck it up and it has to stop.
Well, normally by menopausal women chucking the stuff at men. Anyway.
I find it quite astonishing how patronising all the advice is. It's now sort of talking therapies. I read somewhere that men at work are being given advice, being given sessions, sit-down sessions on how to handle menopausal women, and it's supposed to be a sort of, you know, look after the women at work who are going through a difficult time, but, you know, how to handle menopausal women. It sounds Victorian.
Sounds quite good.
Sounds quite useful.
That's quite good. when do I start?
But it's one of the... Why would you... this is just really gets me hot under the collar. It does, because it's patronising. It is also the nice guidelines are removing the word woman from it as well, and saying it people who suffer with menopausal symptoms.
If you've got people, if other people suffer from menopausal symptoms, trans women, non-binary people, that's fair enough. I mean, a doctor should treat whatever the illness happens to be. Well, not illness.
You can't have the menopause. You can't have the menopause unless you have female body parts.
Well, I mean, what they're saying is that trans women do get symptoms of it.
Trans men.
Sorry.
How?
As non-binary people do. So on the basis of that, that it seems to me that doctors should be treating that if those symptoms exist.
Hang on, I know that you're our lefty on the left, but I've got to pull you up on this. Are you actually saying that biological men can have the menopause? Come on.
Biological women. It's very confusing. I understand this. Biological women, people born as women who then transition to be men, they are trans men.
Yeah.
They still have a menopause because they are biological women.
Yeah, because
but they don't identify
women.
as women. So using the word women is therefore insulting them. I mean, my argument would be...
Is anybody else confused?
Yes, but there's not very many of them.
Yeah, should we just stick with it to be women? It just feels that women are being erased from practically every part of life.
No, that's just including other people. That's not erasing women, is it?
I mean, trust me, if you would like to have some of the symptoms, you know, be my guest if you want to be inclusive and share it. You crack on, my
It does
love.
feel as though women has become a bit of a swear word.
Yeah, and it feels like the talking therapy might not work with this pair. Shall we move on? Because there's some more scandal about expenses, and this sounds like one of those my dog ate the homework excuses. Could be wrong. Scottish minister blames his son for watching football for an 11 grand iPad roaming bill.
Yes, and I think that the issue here is actually the fact that Michael Matheson doesn't seem to have told the truth. So what happened was that he ran up a bill of £11,000 on his iPad when he was on holiday in Morocco. It turns out that his sons were streaming football using his official iPad as a hotspot.
Yeah.
That's how he ran up the bill. OK, what he should have done then is immediately paid it back. In fact, what he did was he paid £3,000 back from the £11,000. The taxpayer picked up £8,000 on the basis he was doing constituency work, and that's what ran up the roaming charges. All of that sounded a bit odd. The trouble is he didn't come clean when he should have done when he discovered that it was his son streaming football.
I suppose, Claire, on the upside, at least he was watching football.
Well, it was his son's, wasn't it? He didn't want to tell the truth because he didn't want his family to come under public scrutiny.
And now they are.
His family are now under public scrutiny, and I don't think they would have been to start with. It does bring in some really serious points about security, though, if you're going to take your government device abroad, especially into a country like Morocco. You shouldn't be having it with sensitive data on roaming where anybody could...
We shouldn't take it at all.
Into it. No,
Has he now apologised? Because as far as I could tell, his defence seemed to be, no, I didn't do it.
No, I mean, he said he's sorry about it in this... Well, no wonder, because he's about to lose his job if things carry on. He's reported himself to the investigatory body of the Scottish Parliament so they can look into it. And his excuse is that the reason he didn't come clean is he wanted to protect his family from scrutiny.
Well, that
don't think that
hasn't gone too well, has it?
That hasn't gone too well, and that doesn't really wash if you're in public office.
No, OK, Claire Purcell and Nigel Nelson, thank you very much. Superb as ever. Thanks for joining us, and you'll be back, of course, in the next hour. But before that, here's your weather.